it's Tuppence and it's another Froggy Friday. I've got my frog mould and I've also got some of these, they call them pot toppers. They're chunks and shards of glass that you can put on top of your plant pots or in your garden. So they've been tumbled. I don't think they've been dyed. I think the colours are the original colours, but they have been tumbled so that they are frosted and they're not quite so sharp. But you can see they're really chunky and I don't think that's going to fit into my frog. So I've been sorting through them and I've done one of the jars. I did the jar that is green, it's called Shamrock. And this is all I got out of that huge jar. So I'm going to work my way through this second jar and I think this one is called Lagoon. So it's a kind of blue. So I just want to pick out ones that are roughly a centimetre, kind of like that, and that aren't too sharp. So I won't bore you with this. I'm just going to carry on sorting through this, looking for small pieces, and then I'll pop those to the side, and I probably add some colour to them because they're very, very pale. I don't think that they're going to work for what I want. But the rest of these big ones, I'll just pop back into my jar and I can use those for something else. Okay, this is all I managed to get out of those two jars, but I think that's going to be more than enough. I only want to fill the middle part of my frog. But as you can see, they are pale. You can't even distinguish that there's any colour in there. So I'm going to add some alcohol inks to these. I've got two colours I'm going to use. I've got a blue colour, it's called Pool by Adirondack, that's Tim Holtz. I'm going to drop some of that in there. Shake that around so that it covers bits of the glass. Keep rattling that around. And then I'm going to add another colour. And this one's going to be a green. It's called Lime Green and it's by SigWong, which I got from Temu. So that's a pretty light green, but I think once it mixes with that blue, I'm going to get a nice colour, like a sea glass type colour. Okay, give this a shake around. Make sure it's all covered. Great, I like that colour. So I'm going to have to let this dry before I pop that in my frog. So I'm just going to grab a plastic tray and then I can spread these out, make sure that they dry thoroughly, and then I'll be able to pop them into the resin. Back when I've mixed my resin. Okay, I've put my frog mould onto the tray for my curing machine so that I don't have to move it once I've poured the resin in. And I've mixed up 2 ounces of craft resin, which is a 1-to-1 epoxy. Now the frog takes 4 ounces, but I'm mixing up 2 because by the time I put that glass in, it is going to displace some of that, so I don't know how much I'm going to need. And I'm also going to add a little bit of Dazzling Diamonds glitter to this. I don't want too much, I just want enough to give the impression of a shimmer. So I'm just going to put 2 very tiny scoops in there. Okay, I think that will be enough. I'm just going to pop the lid back on that. And now I need to give this a good stir. So I used my Resiners dual head resin mixer to mix my resin, but I do need to make sure that I scrape the sides and the bottom as I'm mixing this glitter in for at least 30 seconds, just to make sure there isn't any of the raw resin or unmixed resin in there. And I'm going to try and do this without putting too many bubbles in, although I'm not really that fussed if I do get any bubbles in there. My aim for this frog is to make it look like a crystal cluster, and I don't mind if I get any bubbles in with that glass because I think it's going to add a little bit more definition. I know that when I put the glass in there, I'm going to lose any of that frosting that might have been on there. When you cover up sanded resin with new resin, it becomes shiny and clear again, and the same thing's going to happen to that glass. It's not going to look frosted when I put it in there. It's probably just going to look like one great big lump of green. So if I've got some bubbles, it might help to maintain some of that definition that I do have individual chunks. Okay, so that is mixed up. So I'm going to lay the glass in before I pour the resin in. Here it is, it's all dry. I'm going to grab a handful and I'm dropping that mostly in the body. I don't want it to go too far forward into the head. But I'm just going to mound it up into the frog. And I am going to use a lot, as much as I can, as long as it stays below the surface of the mould. But I don't want it really to go in any of the arms or the head. I'm going to pop a little bit into the thigh of this one. Maybe that's too big of a chunk. Let me move that one out. I'll put some little pieces in there. Once I've got this as I'd like, I'm going to pour the resin in and I'm going to let that run down. If there is any gaps under there, I am going to be fine with that because I'm going to be adding more crystals onto the top of the frog, and any holes that might be there, that's just going to add to my effect that the crystals are actually growing out of the frog rather than just sat on top of it. So I'm just going to pour this over, drizzle it in. I'll drizzle it up into the arms. As I say, I don't know how high this is going to come up, but I am going to drop all of this resin in here. And it looks like I needed more. That's okay, it is just resin with glitter in it. I can mix up some more. Don't have to match any colours. Just get the last little bits out and scrape out every bit of resin. I'm not going to waste any. And then I can use this same pot to mix up a little bit more because I'm definitely going to need some. I can see the line of where the resin is under the chin. So I'm going to carry on putting in some more of the crystals. And as I say, as long as I make sure that I don't end up with this over the top of the mould, I should be fine. And just make sure that I get those covered in and underneath that resin. Yep, that's causing it to rise up a little higher under the chin, so I might be able to fill this up just by dropping in some more of these chunks. Give them a poke again, make sure that they get covered in resin. Still got some more room. Just make sure there are no bubbles trapped as well under the chin, and that I don't really want. I'd like the head and the hands, everything to be completely solid, but as I say, I don't mind if I end up with bubbles or chunks missing on the back, that's fine. Right, I'm getting pretty close to the surface now, so I'm just going to pop a few into these arms if I can find some smaller ones. Each one that I add is raising that level of the resin a little bit higher. I've only got small pieces left now, so I'm just going to keep adding them until either the resin is completely full or I can't add any more. And I think I am probably about there now. Just add one more little chunk and that will be enough. Make sure that is all covered up, and I definitely need to mix up some more resin just to top this up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I mixed up just over an ounce of resin and added some glitter. I didn't need that much, I just needed to fill in the hands and the legs, which meant that the whole frog took just under 2.5 ounces of resin. So those chunks of glass really did make a difference. Once I'd filled them up, I took a microbrush stick and just went underneath the hips and the chin to make sure there were no bubbles. I gave it a quick spritz of isopropyl alcohol and I put it in my curing machine to cure for a couple of hours. Okay, it's been about 2 3/4 hours and it is cured, but the toes are still pretty soft because those areas are very thin, so I'm going to leave it in the mould. But I just want to show you that I do have some bubbles in there, but I can also see the definition of all those individual stones. It hasn't just merged into one blob, so I'm liking that. And I can see that I've definitely got a couple of bubbles there, maybe one there, I don't know. It doesn't look as bad as I thought it would be, but like I say, I'm not worried about that. I'm going to add some of these crystals. And this, you've seen me use probably many times before if you watch my channel. It is cat litter crystals. I'm going to use the same alcohol inks to colour them. So I've got the lime green again. And I've got the pool. Now the difference I found with this is that because they are cat litter crystals, they are designed to absorb moisture. And they did. They absorbed the alcohol inks as soon as I sprayed it on top of them, which meant that some were really green and some were blue, and there wasn't any mixing of the colour in between. So I thought I'd better mix my colour first in a medicine cup. And then I could add my crystals to that. Again, they just absorbed it straight away, so it didn't go very far. I tipped them out onto a tray and sprayed some isopropyl alcohol on them, trying to dilute that colour and just make it go further. I mixed them up with my hands. I added some more alcohol ink to the tray, mixing the colours, added some isopropyl alcohol and just mixed everything together with my hands. And I did manage to get a little bit more colour into the crystals. Some of them would take colour fine and others wouldn't. I spread them out and left them to dry. As they absorbed pretty much instantly, it didn't take that long for them to dry. Now some of them were matte crystals and some were very glassy. Some took colour really well and was a little too strong, not the right colour for me, and some didn't take colour at all. I don't know why there was any difference in them, but I just sorted through them looking for any that had that glassy shine and the nice green colour that I wanted. Then it was time to demould the frog. The hands and the feet were still a little bit soft, but it was fine to demould. I just had to be a little careful. Okay, now I can flip this over. The back is looking good and the front is looking surprisingly good too. I actually don't have as many bubbles as I thought I might have, and I can see all the little individual rocks in there. It isn't just one green clump. So there's a little divot here and there, but this is the area that I'm going to be covering up anyway, so that's fine. I'm going to use these crystal moulds to add some more crystals to the back of the frog. I'm going to be using the lime green and pool alcohol inks, and I'll only use part of the moulds. They're really big, too big for what I want, so if I just use the sides I should be able to get the right size. And for the sparkle I'm going to add some of this Hex opalescent glitter to my mix. So I've got my Let's Resin UV resin, add that to my pot, and then I can start to add my colours. So I'll do a couple of drops of the green. I don't want to add too much because I haven't got very much UV resin in here. And then I can put my glitter in. I do love this opalescent Hex chunky glitter. I'll mix that around. Yeah, that's too light, so I'm going to add some more blue to that. Make sure that's all mixed in, and then I can start to fill the mould. I'm just going to use the smaller edges because they aren't quite as tall, and as long as I make sure that the pieces that I use are joined up, I don't have to fill the whole mould. It's still going to look like a cluster because it's an irregular shape anyway. So I'm just going to take a microbrush stick and poke that down, make sure that I get to the bottom of those little cavities. Once I've made sure that there's no bubbles in there, I'm going to set this aside into my double-sided UV resin lamp, and then I'll be able to cure all of these pieces together. Okay, they're all cured. Let me get them out. I need to do just a tiny bit of cleanup, get rid of all those sharp edges, but that will look fine. That one's pretty much ready to go. Don't need to do anything with that. And the same with that one. Now they should all slot together, or near enough, and then I can patch any areas that might be in between them. Alright, I just want to try them in place, so I'm just pushing them onto the back of the frog and they're sticking on their own at the moment. I haven't put any resin or glue or anything like that. I'm just going to trim this one up, get rid of these excess pieces using a pair of ordinary scissors because it's thin enough that I can cut them. Alright, oops. So I think they're going to be able to lock or interlock into place, and then I can fill any gaps using the smaller crystals. So I think that'll be fine. Right, to fix these permanently I'm going to be using my UV torch and the UV bonding resin from Let's Resin. So I'll put a little bit on the bottom, and then I can hold that in place and use the torch to cure it. Now I might have to actually charge this torch up. It's a USB chargeable torch, and I think I need to actually charge this up, but it should cure. There is enough clear resin that I should be able to get the UV rays through. I did need to swap out my torch, and that did the trick. Once I tacked it in place, I cured it under my UV lamp, and then I repeated the process, adding the other 2 crystals. Okay, the larger crystals are in place and fixed. So now I want to add some UV resin to these smaller cat litter crystals, and then I can extend that and pack around it so that it looks like all these crystals are growing out of the frog. I'm just going to give this a quick stir. Make sure that everything is coated. I haven't got too much resin in here. I really only want to form a kind of paste, just enough to glue them in place. And I'm going to add some of the hex glitter so that I get some crystalline sort of shimmer. Make sure that that is all mixed in. So there is no loose resin. All the resin is on the crystals and coating them. There isn't any resin pooling in the bottom of that pot. And now I just need to apply this to the frog. And I'll do that and curing as I go with the torch. So I am going to pop on some music and you can watch. Okay, so this is where I'm at now. I've used all the crystals that I want to use on the back, but it does still look a bit like it's just applied to the back, and I've got some messes around here, just where the resin has leaked out and I didn't clean it off properly. So I want to tidy that up, and to do that I'm going to cover that up. I've got some of the UV resin that I used to make the big crystals left over, so I'm going to add some of the chunky opal glitter to that. And then I can paint that along those edges and tidy up the margins. And hopefully it's going to add a little bit more glitter. And it will look a bit more like I've got small, and then the crystals are growing larger and larger as they get into the middle of the clump. So I'm just going to add a bit more glitter. Again, I don't want a lot of resin. I mostly want this to be a paste. And then once I'm happy with this, and that looks pretty good to me, I'm going to do the same process and just apply this, but again along that margin, so that I tidy up any mess and it looks like smaller crystals growing into larger crystals. I'm going to cure that under the UV lamp, and I'll carry on going all the way round. Froggy Friday is a weekly collaboration that is hosted and arranged by these wonderful people. Check out my description for the link to the playlist so that you can watch the videos that everyone has made. And here's my contribution for this week. So I am not going to do any eyes, I'm not going to paint them in because I want everything to focus on this crystal cluster. And I think that's come out quite nicely, although I think next time I'd really not use those cat litter crystals. For this, I want something that's a little bit more glassy, and they're very cloudy, and some of them didn't actually take the colour in the way that I wanted them to. Having said that, I am pretty happy with him, and I hope that you like him too. And if you have liked this video, please give me a thumbs up, comment, share, hype if you can, and subscribe if you haven't. There is a QR code on the screen. If you scan that, you'll be able to subscribe to my channel, which is free. It will help me, and you'll be able to come back and see what I'm going to make next time. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.